Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Though, but I'm definitely not on the out, I guess I should say. So I didn't get a fever so far. I had it this afternoon. Just I'm very bloody sore. And so if I get a little bit more passionate, it might be because of that, or it's because Americans, specifically cops, can't stop fucking murdering black people. I don't understand what it is. I don't get it. Other than the fact that we've had, I mean, folks, here's the big deal, right? We are in the middle of a landmark case right now, and then we had somebody get killed less than 15 miles from this landmark case for Derek chauvinistic motherfucking police officer. I guess he's not a police officer anymore, but he was. So, it's 15 miles. Oh, and on top of that, how many other people have been killed within the last 2 months? So now, I'm going to get a little fired up tonight, and we are going to talk about qualified immunity and gun control, because I think they tie together, and my old stance on gun control is changing a little bit, I think. I don't know how much I agree with Biden's doctrine. We're going to get into that. But what I'm really going to get into is why we need to now extend gun control to the fucking government and the cops, period. Because they don't seem to understand it. And in a second, we'll get into the video, and I don't think I'm going to play it because I don't want to give any of that video playtime on our show. And I don't even have the link for the video in the description. And it's the most disturbing fucking video I've seen since the last time I watched a cop kill a black person. How about that? Because it seems they're happening quite a bit now. But before we get into that, let me bring my co-host, my good friend, Mr. Hannaberry. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. I've got a really cool thing. I haven't even told you about this. I have a really cool thing associated with this topic that is currently, right now, my favorite book in the last couple years, without a doubt, my favorite current living writer, and it's specifically about the topic at hand when it comes to shooting and guns and cops and qualified immunity and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a really cool thing that I'll just mention quickly, and I might even do a review of the book at some point just on our blog, because it's that good. It's unbelievable. So some cool stuff coming down the pipeline on my end. But other than that, awesome. It's been a good weekend.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because it was somewhat nice out this weekend in Michigan. We had 50% of the weekend was rain, and the other 50% was really sunny. Not warm. It was fucking cold as shit still in Michigan. And my wife's like, Chris, it's only like, 65 degrees. It's not that cold. I'm like, yes, that's cold. I'm fat. I'm a fat guy. I'm trying to work on that. But I'm a fat guy, and I want it to be like 75 minimum. The only time I care is like when I sleep. When I'm sleeping, I prefer like 62 degrees because just freeze me, let me wrap myself in my blankets and fuck the world, right?
Yeah, we were close to 80 here on Saturday, and we putting a lot of our most recent stimulus into landscaping and house beautification. I dug up and tore up stumps and bushes and trees, and we're doing patio stones and a pea gravel pit for the girls underneath their swing set and everything. I mean, I was doing manual labor. My whole body hasn't had this much exercise in a long time. So Saturday was rainy and nasty and it was good. It gave me a little bit of time to kind of recover. And then Saturday evening and rain stopped enough that we could cut up some more bushes and dig up some more stumps and plant a bunch of hostas. We transplanted stuff all over. I don't know. It's just a nice get outside weekend on my end. And then in between that, like I finally got my Android, my new super construction Android phone, and I've got Overdrive, which is my app that I connect to my library. And so I've downloaded like 5 audiobooks. I've just been binging, just absorbing stuff. Right now I'm going through Portable Atheist again, just because I haven't in a long time. But like, I go in these bursts where it's just like podcasts like crazy, and then I'll switch over to audiobooks like crazy, and then it's to Pandora and just comedy or metal or something. But like I just go until I get sick of it and then move on to the next thing. Currently I'm in audiobooks.
Well, I would agree with you. I use Overdrive and Audible at the same time. And it's
I just like having a library, man. Oh, I love the library. It's so great.
No, and I agree with you on that. Like, I think that's I agree. And I try to convince my son to use Overdrive too, because it's like, dude, you work in a factory basically your whole day. They allow you to wear headphones, so he's constantly streaming audiobooks, and he was spending like $200 a month on books. I was like, dude, go to the library. They got all the old Star Wars books, man. Trust me. And if we need to, we'll change your address to Kentwood, to one of my other friends' house or something like that, or he'll give you his login, and you can download them for there. And the best part is you get no late fees for those, right? You know, like they just disappear. Like they leave my device when they're gone.
Yeah.
It's like, boom, goodbye. I was like, shit, I was in the middle of that, you know. But
the most important thing you got to get though is whatever app you're using is got to download the whole audiobook onto the memory. So my county library has an app, and what it does is it streams the audiobook. So if you have limited data, because you go from Wi-Fi hotspot to Wi-Fi hotspot or whatever, but if you have limited data and you're streaming your audiobook, you can burn through your data. So Overdrive allows me to download everything on my Wi-Fi hotspot at home and then just load everything up. And that's always the best way. One, because it guarantees to lock in where you ended off last time, because it's saved on your phone. But
yeah, I do have unlimited data, but we limit his data. So because one day I came home and I was like, man, I can't get my phone to stream anything, and I was like, what the fuck? And I look and like we got
he's Bitcoin mining.
Gigs. Yeah, no, he's not. No, at least he'd be making money, I guess. But no, he was streaming Disney Plus at work because he couldn't get on the Wi-Fi, so he was watching it for a whole week and didn't tell anybody. I was like, oh my God, stop doing that. You just burned all my data. Well, I didn't think I had data. I thought it was on the Wi-Fi. And I'm like, you just said it. You didn't. You just told me you couldn't use the Wi-Fi. Well, I just didn't know why it worked. So I don't know. Maybe you gave me access back. I was like, yes, I was trying to not be a dick and give you, internet access outside of a Wi-Fi facility. But I'll tell you right now, your ass limited now. And like now I set up alerts. I was like, if we go over 18 gig, I shut everybody off except for me. And like, because it's just like my wife will do the same thing sometimes. She'll like watch YouTube videos in the car. It's like, that eats data, right? And like it's really hard, in fairness, to go through 22 gigs. But when you put the two of them together, sometimes they can. And the only reason we had the unlimited data handle is because I needed it for travel, because I needed to be able to connect through a hotspot on my phone to travel if I ever had to. But because my reimbursement is still the same and I'm not traveling right now, I didn't downgrade it, because it's like, until I have to pay more for my data, why do I care that much? Might as well have it. And AT&T hates it when you try to go backwards. They really do. Like, yeah, I only need the 10 gig plan again. Well, we're gonna charge you almost the same. And you're like, okay. Oh, how about this? If you keep it, we'll throw in HBO. Fine, sold. That's a free HBO subscription. I can watch John Oliver every week. All right, works for me.
Yeah, that's a pretty good win there.
Yeah, I watch John Oliver every week anyway, and like there's other things on HBO that are cool, but really for me the big thing is John Oliver. Like, can I watch it? Can I watch it the day it comes out, when it comes out? Yep, okay, works for me. But
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's so many different things you can choose from nowadays. I kind of have my few things and then just bury my head in the sand when it comes to most of the rest of the stuff.
if it's free though, would you take it?
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you work
Mine's
out
free.
if you work out a deal, then go for it. The big one for me is when the data is like, oh, hey, that free stuff you had, it's now costing this, and you're like, bye. I have no qualms about canceling services and stuff like that. So,
And that's like I've been lobbying. There's a local internet provider in Allendale, Michigan, and they provide service in Zealand to the hospital, and it's gigabyte service. Like it's $100 a month, but you get gigabyte service if you want, or you can have 500 meg service for $50 a month, whatever floats your boat. They will not run it in downtown Zealand. I've argued with them for 4 years that I've lived here, saying I will be your spokesperson. I'll be your cheerleader. Oh, you're not Spectrum. You're not AT&T. Oh, you're not any of these. I will be the guy on the side of the road every Saturday for a year if you want, spinning a sign saying, "Get this internet, get this internet." I was like, trust me, my neighbors are cheap. If I went to them and said, "Hey, they offer internet that's cheaper than what you're paying," I guarantee you people will sign up instantly. But no, they won't bite. I can't get them to do it. So this year, my buddy told me I should actually go down and talk to the city board and see if they will look at putting in public internet and maybe leeching off that company since they're already kind of coming in for Spectrum Health. And then if the city pays for running the lines and all of that, maybe they'll be more interested in it. Because I would even be the guy that goes down the road with a petition saying, hey, it's going to cost $50,000 to put this internet in this neighborhood. Y'all want in for like $150, $200 or whatever. We'll split it. I mean,
yeah,
50 people, that's
there's
only
a whole bunch of
$1,000. So
when you do that collective stuff, that's what my city does with their gas lines. And so we have this NOPEC is called NOPEC, and it's a play on OPEC, obviously. But NOPEC, it's a group of people who get together and they negotiate your gas prices. And so you basically just load up and you get a full, you get a discounted price because everybody's working together.
yeah, which is really good. It's kind of like one of those things that you would go, oh, makes sense, right? I mean, we have our own power plant in Zealand.
Collective bargaining. Yeah, collective bargaining doesn't have to just be at work. It can be through corporate and residential and civilian purchases and everything.
So yeah, so I emailed my city board and this week, and I actually, or not last week, and I asked them that question to say, hey, what would it take to get public internet? Here's a great company. I can't get them to invest in Zealand, and I don't understand why. I'll be happy to meet with anybody on this. You know, let me know, because I can build you an ROI if that's what you fucking want. I do that for my job as it is. So, you know, you want a return on investment, how long it'll take, all of that. Oh, you want help petitioning to get it on the ballot? That's
part of the problem that you've got there is when you give internet as a utility, you're getting close to that socialism.
You
and that's the thing that
we have our own power plant, man. Like we have our own electrical grid. Like Zealand doesn't. You know, like we're like Texas but better. there you go. We're bigger than, we're smaller than Texas but better, because most of us don't lose power.
It sounds like the sign out in front of Schitt's Creek.
Yes. Oh, I love that show.
So, anyways, that's our jibber jabber start for 15. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, what are we going to talk about? We're going to do our answering conservative questions, because this question specifically actually, I guess I shouldn't say specifically actually, but this question covers a discussion that we're going to have later in the show. And I only say this because again, as I started the show off, if we can't stop killing Black people when we pull them over, we are going to have an insane problem, because life is going to continue to get worse and people are going to get more passionate than we are now. And now think about it. Once we're out of like this pandemic, people are like, I'm vaccinated. We could protest for months on end if that's what needs to happen. So without further ado, we'll do our answering conservative questions. So, today's question comes from our lovely Reddit thread. What should police do if a person under arrest for a minor crime refuses to cooperate? Now, they gave a little bit of a caveat, right, to this. And so I'll go ahead and read it. And they say Eric Gardner was selling single cigarettes without proper tax and license, right? He got confronted by police and put into chokehold after not cooperating with the arrest. Ignoring the chokehold specifically because it's illegal, right? Just ignore that. How should people or police specifically handle such a situation given any use of force can be unintentionally lethal, especially if the subject has underlying health conditions? The police cannot let someone who committed a crime just walk away, right? So how do we prevent more people from dying over these incidents?
Or I think the other question, or like kind of like another leaning portion of the question would be like, what should they do? So like, the kids selling cigarettes in front of the gas station at one at a time, and the police come in and say, you can't do that. We have to take you down, to book you, whatever. You've done this thing. And they go, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Like they just basically refuse to cooperate at all. When the police officer has an absolute confirmation that something illegal has been done, and it's their job to try to make some kind of arrest. So what should they do? And the question essentially comes down to, well, what do you do to de-escalate a situation? In my opinion, those are the things that they should do. And if anything has been an example, is that the number of police officers that have their badges clear and display, and they have their body cams on and in the ready. And then also when there's multiple police officers all working together to try to de-escalate a situation, like, you know what I mean? Like if it's just one-on-one is when it escalates more and more and more and more and more. And Sandra Bland is a great example of that. And that's actually something that will be relevant to when we talk a little bit later with that book. But like when you have one-on-one escalations, ego, all kinds of things, what we should have is a team of police officers that are trained in de-escalation. Then when there's some minor crime and someone's refusing, there's a series of tactics and a series of things they can do. None of them would require major uses of force. In the worst case scenario, I mean, the only thing that should ever be done in that situation is that more people, and maybe even a social worker who says, this person's been trained for what is apparently turning into a mental health situation or whatever. But like the idea that the police have no other recourse if someone just refuses to do anything, but to just physically intervene, I think is kind of a loaded question on my end. And that's probably what the idea is here. It's like, well, if they say no, then they have to use physical force. I don't think that's the only option. I think there's tons of other options, but we think of the police as like a militarized and physical force using tool in our society. So like when we think of that, that's like the only recourse that people think police officers have. They have way more tools. I think they're really too quick to use those tools, or the physical tools. And I think there's so much more that they could do to try to make the situation better. Try to figure out what it is. Maybe a situation takes an hour, a half hour to solve instead of 5 minutes. Get on the ground, we're putting you in the car. There's a variety of things that they think they could do, and I'm sure that the training manual actually says a lot of that stuff. It's just whether or not the police officers use those tools that they're given their training, or they're not given enough training long term, so that becomes muscle memory as opposed to past training in military or things like that, where you're trained to use violence initially, which is another issue when it comes to the policing, is that where their training comes from. If they're coming from military and then going into civilian, you're using a different set of tools. So I guess that's kind of what I would say, is just try to get teammates and backup, and use non-lethal and psychoanalytical sources and tools as opposed to physical tools, and even non-lethal things like tasers and stuff like that. That still can be very, very, very dangerous and detrimental to health. So I wouldn't even go there unless it's like, I mean,
necessary.
The person, yeah, you know what I mean? Like there's the suspect is advancing and there's no recourse. But
so I think this seems pretty easy. Like, I I know people think it's not, but it seems pretty easy to me. And we can use how many different functions from that, right? So think of it this way. We have a system that allows police to get away with almost anything. We have very little recourse for it. So the big issue that I have, and I'll tell you that this we could transition this into a couple of different ways, right? So the first way is if we know they're unarmed or we know that they're not endangering anyone else. You can fucking let them go. Did you get their information already? Oh, yeah? Can you issue them a ticket later? If not, maybe we should look at our system to say, okay, well, can we issue a ticket within 24 hours, right? If you're there, and I'll use Dante writes, I'll use this as an example. And I say this, and I keep me from a soapbox, Hannah. That's your job tonight.
Well, it is a conservative questions portion, so keep it tied to the question.
It is. So when you want, for example, in that case, they shot the motherfucker because they didn't know how to grab a taser. So they shot their fucking gun because they didn't fucking know where their taser was. Oh, and by the way, their taser is on the opposite side of the belt. Now, here's the better part of the whole thing. The guy got back in his car, didn't reach for a gun, and just wanted to leave. You already got his information. What the fuck are you here for? Let his ass go. You could look. Do you want to chase him down the road? Is he a violent criminal? Is he a serial killer? No. Okay. Is he a child molester that has hidden from the law for a long time? Oh, no. Okay. Is he a crooked accountant? Oh, we wouldn't care about that because they're usually white. I don't know what he could have done. Okay. Is he a violent killer in a gang membership, right? Then maybe we could talk about it. Do we want to get that person off the street because, we know they're a known killer. Oh, you don't know that. Okay. Well, I don't see a reason to ever shoot them, and I don't see any reason that you have to arrest them. And this is a weird experience I've had with my own son, right? My son and I have very aggressive arguments sometimes. Especially as a minor, where he literally refuses to do anything. To the point where it's like, okay, I can call the cops and have them physically remove you. I can physically remove you. You understand if you start destroying things, we got a problem here, right? Now, in fairness, my son's never taken a bunch of shit and destroyed it. Neither has any of these people that the police are trying to arrest. So, if they're not destroying things, they're not harming another person, they aren't at risk to harm another person. So, for example, if they're shit-faced and they get back in the car, we might have a problem. If they're shit-faced and walk away, oh, okay, whatever, right? Because you could be drunk and walk away. How many cars are you going to hit with your non-vehicle? I don't know about you, Hannah, but if I don't have a vehicle, I probably am not going to harm another car by walking into it drunk. Probably not. Maybe, but probably not. So it all comes down to the harm principle. And if you can't understand or can't see that there's a harm principle that should be applied at all times, you have to let these people go and catch up with them later. And I know people hate saying that because they're always worried about the what ifs. What if somebody got killed? What if somebody else gets murdered? What if somebody else dies? What if somebody does this and that? Those things don't exist. And when they do, we should have better ways to deal with it than that. So I don't disagree with you, Hannah, that maybe let's bring an expert in. Maybe let's bring somebody in that can help de-escalate the situation. Maybe we should have a half hour traffic stop versus we want to do this in 5 or 10 minutes because we are a capitalistic machine that needs to push police back onto the road so they can find more people to make more money for their department. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And also on the Facebook chat, I just sent you a picture of a series of handheld tasers that look like handguns. if you could pull that up just to show, it's just an image real quick. It's the idea that you can mix one of those up with a handgun. they're yellow for a reason, right? But that's like except for that one that looks like a devil's pitchfork on the left hand side halfway down, but also the upper image there, upper left, that's very relevant to this conversation. But all of these tools are yellow. They're highlighted orange. They have bright colors for a reason. But anyways, in the end, we're looking at the question of someone who is saying if someone's refusing, the proper recourse is the use of force and violence, and that's someone who's assuming that the police should be a strength and imposing and power conveying type organization, as opposed to what you're talking about basically is solving the situation non-violently. And in some cases, if they do something illegal or more illegal in these proceedings, like, we have to be able to use judgment. And the idea that the other one is the minor crime. That's the other issue that is interesting, because in all reality, I mean, minor crimes, severe crimes of crime, for semantically speaking, and like, we can just remove a lot of the stuff that we police in this country, because most of it is irrelevant and ridiculous, in my opinion. And so, like, there's a whole series of things that we talk about, like the people who are all blue lives matter and thin blue line loving libertarians who want maximum freedom, but then also want these same police officers to police everyone who's got one cigarette and one tail light out and their license plate light is burned out. I mean, how much freedom and liberty is that bringing? So there's a bit of a paradox and a conundrum even in the question that's being asked.
Yeah, and I'll look for the actual photo, if they have it, of the taser that
the cop is supposed to have.
Yeah. I had it earlier, but I have so many things I've been saving over this, and my Twitter's going crazy, my cell phone's going crazy, everybody's going crazy. There's just tons of shit going on, and my problem is that these cops, and I guess we're gonna move into our next segment here, is if you watch the video, and I'm not gonna encourage you to do it because it is extremely graphic. Like, it's very hard, and I'll be honest, it's very hard for me to watch, and I'm always torn between this and that, right? But the one positive thing that they did do was release the body cam footage
quickly.
Usually
it takes months,
with the news,
not years.
The next day, this happened yesterday afternoon. They released it, and I'll be honest. If we don't get to our gun control segment, we will definitely cover it next week. But I'm telling you right now, all of that is extremely important to this conversation, because we talk about gun control, and everybody's worried you're going to come take your guns because the cops have guns and the military has guns. And I'm saying, why don't we just decriminalize or de-gun everything, right? Or give every fucking person a gun, so that when a cop pulls somebody over and you shoot them because they could have been a threat. And I get really angry at this, but this is always like, if that guy, whether it's illegal or not for him to own that gun, he owns a fucking gun, right? You can't just kill somebody that owns a fucking gun, because this proves your theory that if people own guns legally, they could just, cops would stop killing people. That's the fucking stupidest argument I've fucking heard since the all lives matter argument. And I say this not lightly, because I don't own a gun. I don't. I'll be honest. I don't own a gun. I don't like to hunt, because I don't actually want to process the deer. I don't even want to cut the guts out of it. None of that stuff. It's not my thing.
Or even squirrels, birds, rabbits, any of that small game stuff. It's still, nothing. I mean, you're still processing meat. So yeah.
I don't like it, and I'm the guy that would probably be a vegetarian if it tasted
if you
better.
Had to.
That's me. But the idea here is that if I own a gun, a cop's going to approach me immediately, and they're going to essentially go, "Oh, do you have a permit?" But if a cop sees a black person they immediately think thug and threat. And I'm gonna let me be frank and say,
Hi, Frank.
yeah, my friends call me Frank from
Yeah, Donnie
It's
Darko.
Always Sunny. always get labeled as.
Oh, you get that?
the guy
I figured you were talking Frank from Donnie Darko.
No, that could be me too, but not. I'm more of the Frank from, and it's only because I always try to come up with a plan to make money off of whatever we're gonna do. That's usually why, like, I'm the schemer when it comes to my friend group. Anyway, let's move past. That's detracting. But let me be, damn it, let me be frank here and say, when if I were to wear a hoodie and sweatshirt or sweatpants, right? A cop's still gonna ask me, "Do you have a permit for your gun?" They don't immediately think thug, but but because they see a black person in a hoodie and a sweatshirt or a long T-shirt or something like that, they immediately think thug, and they immediately think that gun's illegal. Do you know that gun's illegal? Do you know any of that shit at all?
Well, I mean, there's also the cases where it's not even so whether or not you know, but like when you have a concealed permit and you have that weapon in the car with you, if you get pulled over, even if you're on the passenger side, you are supposed to tell the police officer that I have a permit and I have my weapon on me or whatever. Like, you have to say that. That's one of the things that they tell you is, like, you have to announce this to the authorities. And Philando Castile is a great example of that. He basically told the cop that, and the cop shot him like 7 times. And so like there is no real equality here. That's one of the things that they talk about when it comes to, the segment that you have there for Another Murder by a Cop, when all the Black Panthers, and there was a huge push by the African American community to start arming themselves, to start getting their weapons by means that were legally afforded to the average citizens in the country. And we saw gun control legislation come down from southern states and from conservatives, and all this stuff was just like, well, wow, wait, we in the NRA before the early 80s, the Reaganomics era, the NRA supported gun control. It was doing that essentially to keep certain groups of the segments of the population from having weapons and all that kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of hypocrisy that's happening here, and the police officer situation is kind of it's not a side effect of it, but it is a situation that's exacerbating. And it kind of indicates some of the underlying psychosocial and psychosemantic issues that are happening, and the reason why we start seeing a lot of this stuff. And so just real quick, Rev, is the idea that what you were trying to get to is that Another Murder by a Cop in Minnesota, while Derek Chauvin's being is on trial for the murder of George Floyd, within a certain short period of distance, that a young man was killed by someone who says now that they accidentally grabbed their firearm instead of their taser, their non-lethal means. And so this is basically an example, very relevant to the trial of the millennium, or whatever I've been hearing people call this, and it doesn't feel any different than anything else that happened through the Floyd situation and through a bunch of other things. Like, I don't see any progress, and this is a great example of why this trial is so important.
Yeah. What color is the thing that looks like a pistol on her left-hand side?
Bright yellow, brah. Bright yellow.
And here's the fucking dilemma. If you look at the other cop, you fucking see a yellow one on the left side too, right? So
they have that's part of their uniform.
If I were a fucking trainer here, right? If I was that person training, you reach for the left, then you reach for the right. And we would do a little dance and a little song, and I'd make all the fucking goddamn cops that are training with me feel uncomfortable. Because that's me. Because it's more fucking important. You always reach to the left and not to the right. Cops are goddamn trained to reach for the right because it's their native side for the most part, right?
Well, they just say their dominant hand, their dominant side, typically right hand, dominant side for firearm, non-dominant for non-lethal means. I think it should be the other way around. I think you should have to use your non-dominant hand to grab the lethal weapon because it takes way more thinking to grab that weapon. I know their argument is that when there's lethal force happening, I'm watching a cop slowly drive down my street right now. But the non-lethal means for a police officer is not considered your first line of defense. Weapon comes out, dominant hand grabs your firearm, and you return fire. And obviously, there is a physical force and retaliation. There's all kinds of training based behind that. And then the non-lethal means are things that are added for tactical and strategic reasons. But I mean, these are the results that we're getting here. Is when we train to kill, and non-lethal is considered strategic and a secondary means of subduing all these, all of these dangerous people out there. We're running into the situation where we can. I mean, this is an obvious, ridiculous example. There's no way that you could ever pull your taser and accidentally think it's your firearm, or the other way around, where you pull your firearm and accidentally think it's your taser. There's no possible way.
If
like
you watch
I honestly,
that video, if you watch the actual video, Hannah, and I'm not telling you to do that or anybody else, and we're not playing it tonight. And I keep telling myself that because I just want to play it to show proof. Like, I just want to be like, you could see this person should be immediately in jail, even if it's even for manslaughter. Release her, charge her with manslaughter at minimum. I don't. It was not an aggressive intentional, but I can tell you in the video you can see her say taser, 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 and then reach for her gun, cock her gun, and shoot him. You don't have a cocked gun in your holster. That's not how guns. Like, any person knows that. You don't do that, right? Like, I don't do that. Do you walk around with a cocked gun everywhere everywhere you bring a gun, Hannah?
Shoot your legs.
You would, but, or your dick. It's your dick. It's gonna be your dick. I have to say that because it's like.
In the end, there's a strategic reason for this, and I guarantee you there's probably a setup strategy among another police officer. Maybe they're looking for me. Anyways, there's probably a strategic
right
reason.
now about this. We got to arrest this guy. He's in the wrong community. Yeah. We got to move him.
Yeah, we keep hearing about the deep state coming to get us all. Yeah. Anyways, this is probably something that's a basic strategy that's been worked on through some of the police officers to say, well, we need to have some kind of response in a situation like this, and let's just go with accidental tasers for 100. You know what I mean? And see what happens. So I mean, I don't know.
Now get this. So right here, and it might be harder to see. So I guess I'll add a link to our description, but. They have the arrest warrants. What he was, the reason why they were arresting him. Guess how much his fines were that he didn't pay?
I see 346 in the side.
$346. Now, and this right here, I'd be like, and you can ask my wife, because as soon as I read this tweet, I walked in there and I showed my wife and I said, "You fucking never believe this shit." And I say this because I have owed the courts this amount of money and had a bench warrant issued for me because of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was pulled over for speeding and they had a bench warrant and they're like, "We got to arrest you," and it's like, what? And then you find out it's just because you have unpaid fines and you're like, fuck me, this sucks. But they didn't shoot me. They didn't harass me. They didn't even handcuff me until they put me in the car. And it was only so that when they got to the station for, the county, that they could be like, yeah, we do that. They asked me if I wanted a private cell and if I wanted to make my phone call before they booked me so that I could have somebody there to pick me up faster. I'm dead serious.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing for the Dante Wright situation. Do you know the relevance to the air fresheners?
No, other than I think in Michigan it's illegal to have one hanging in your rearview mirror. Because you're not supposed to have anything hanging in your rearview mirror, from my understanding.
So what it is this is actually so the book I was mentioning earlier is called Talking to Strangers, and it's by Malcolm Gladwell. And if you haven't read it, you should. And it's, to me, it is mandatory reading. This is the most revelatory book on this topic. So in the book, it actually talks about this. Drug runners and people who use drugs by the police. They are told that they hang extra air fresheners on their rearview mirrors to hide the smell of drugs and marijuana and things in their cars. So the cops use that as an example or a reason to pull someone over to get a whiff. And this is something that's in here in this book. This, now, at the beginning of it, you're going to be like, it's Sandra Bland, and it's the story, and it kind of starts there, and it makes a big long arc for psychology, for police tactics, police reasonings, why they do the things they do, and then eventually works its way back to the Sandra Bland case, gives you a clean, easy answer as to why that happened, and then says, no, after all the things we've talked about, I think we're better than that. And it goes into a real reason. And it's the most comprehensive and non-controversial, but very, very clear. Malcolm Gladwell is just one of the best long-form journalists I've ever read. But this book is without a doubt got my absolute top referral right now. But in the story, in this book, there are police officers that are pulling people over because they have those pine air fresheners hanging from their rearview mirrors, and that's used as an indicator to give them probable cause, because the book says that drug runners and drug people and drug users and marijuana smokers load up their cars with air fresheners to try to hide the scent. And so that's the reason he was pulled over. And then they check his license plate and they say he's got air fresheners, there's a marijuana arrest in the past, we've got him, we're going to go in, we're going to give some sniffies, and he's done. And then, all of those kinds of things run through the cop, and it's pre-strategized, pre-planned, and that was exactly what happened here. And this is, unfortunately, bad decisions made in a few places. But I mean, the guy could have gone to jail and been in horrible, horrible financial distress for the rest of his life, and he chose to not sit there. And so the cops responded lethally, which is not what they should have done. So it's just it's unfortunate and gross everywhere. But the entire situation was started based on what I can only say is the sketchiest of premises, and over policing and using this thing. I can't remember what city it was from. The Kansas City policing style, which is essentially tons of cops all over the place, pulling over everybody and anybody they can all the time. And it was a basic misinterpretation of the data, and an application of a really good strategy. If you read the book, you'll hear that the strategy essentially uses data and information to pinpoint areas of concern. And in those areas, and if there's very specific times that those crimes and things happen, they need to increase policing massively. And so what the police in this country all said when they saw a really positive decrease, a positive response, so a decrease in crime in those crime areas, they said, this is an application that we should just put everywhere. And so police were basically, and they do now, is they over police and they aggressively police areas with no crime. They pull over people that don't really have any reason to do it. And so, like, this is a situation that was instigated by a variety of things when it comes to not trusting people. There's all kinds of really interesting stuff that are, and factors that cause these stupid, deadly traffic infractions and confrontations that are so dumb and annoying, because the police aren't supposed to be doing this kind of stuff. They're supposed to be dealing with, the health and safety of the city and the people around. And so this is a case where this cop was trained poorly and is using a terrible excuse after essentially using way too much force in a stupid pullover, and Nate killed someone. Like, everything sucks about what happened. And the relevance is just in the background. There's another murder by another cop that's on trial. Like, everything looks absolutely duh for all of the people who were protesting and saying this is exactly why we're out here.
Yep. And it's compounded by this video here.
Oh, geez.
Right?
Dude,
This,
that one's so bad. That's
this is
so bad.
Oh, yeah. Like, so what that lady... So let me explain before we get to this real quick. What happened in the video that I'm not going to show is that essentially the guy got out of the car. So Dante's out of the car. They have him against his car trying to handcuff him. And he decides to get back in the car after they didn't secure the handcuffs well. He gets back in the car. They have a skirmish. The cop that was trying to handcuff him is trying to grab him and pull him out of the car. The other cop with the body cam that they showed is around the side. She's also trying to help, and then she reaches for her belt, flips it, shoots at least once, if not twice. Now, you can't hear the gunshots, so I don't know, I don't understand that why those don't show up on there, but you could hear it.
A microphone on a small body cam like that just gets overloaded. And so, like, in my hearing aids, if you blast my hearing aids with too much sound, it just stops working for the moment of the duration of the sound. So that's probably the case.
That's probably what happened. And then what you see is the car take off. And then you see the other two cops that are part of this. And the one cop, like, the lady's like, I shot him. And they're like, and the other black cop's like, you shot him? I shot him. And then, like, she's stating the fact that she shot him right on camera. Like, how is this not like, okay, we lock you up right now. He didn't have a gun. He didn't do any of these things. Like, you should immediately be in jail. Immediately.
Well, even if you do, like, even if you have a gun and you shoot in self-defense, you go to jail, at least immediately. And then they say, okay, this was a justified shooting, like, for a person. So, like, the cops, a little bit more stringent, but yeah, they should be the same thing. Like, if your weapon is fired and you kill someone, you're going into the brig until everything is sorted. Sorry.
Yeah. And the reason they don't send them to the fucking brig is because the brig sucks, and therefore they don't want them in the brig. Yeah. There you go. That's why. And if the brig sucks for the cops to be in, it probably sucks for all the other fucking people. And maybe we should relook at how we're fucking locking people up. But here's the thing. Yeah, you're right. If I walk up to you and you are holding a I hate gays, sign, and I go, fuck you, man, this is bullshit. And you go, yeah, well, it's not. God told me this and that. And I push you, and you draw a gun and shoot me. You go to fucking jail. You go to jail right then and there. Mm-hmm. It's not even a question. You're immediately go to jail. They may release you. You may go to trial, and they justify that you shot me because in self-defense because I pushed you. And that's fair. But you go to jail. Now, in this video, what they have is this guy pulled over. He doesn't understand why he's being pulled over. This cop here, right here, has his gun drawn when the other officer shows up. Already, the other officer draws the gun and comes around the side. They mace the motherfucker. They mace him. Aggressively mace him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. In that video, you see him get maced. Then, the other guy, the guy goes, I just want to comply. Like, I can't see, blah, blah, blah. And the younger cop.
In uniform. The thing that gets me the most is in uniform.
He's got his sergeant tag on his shirt. For fuck's sake. And so, hold on. But so, the other cop, the younger one, goes to take the seatbelt off because they keep telling the guy to take the seatbelt off, and you can see he can't see. And he's like, I got my dog in the back. Now, I'm going to stop right here and say, what if the guy's got PTSD? Man. What if the dog is his service dog that helps with that? You just fucking maced a guy that's trained to kill people better than you. You fucking idiot. You fucking idiot. Why would you do that?
Well, the other thing is, I'm surprised they didn't just start shooting the dog. I don't know if you've seen the police videos when they walk into a place where they've got a call or something, and there's just a dog in the front yard. They just fill it full of bullet holes. Like, I'm disgusted at the entirety of this situation. But I mean, at least they didn't start firing into the car as well to kill the dog. Because I mean, if my dog saw me, either of my dogs saw me getting attacked, which it would interpret that, I guarantee you my dogs would start doing something really erroneous. They would freak out, start barking, who knows what. So, like, I mean, but like this is a military guy. This is uniform on uniform. This is conservative heaven, right? Cops and military just hugging each other. Not really, because it's white cops and an African American military guy, and that doesn't seem to matter. The example when he says it's just like the guy basically says he was scared to get out of his car, and the other cop says you should be like. Could you be more transparent? Could you be more transparent? I don't understand. Like, as a conservative person, seeing something like this and seeing someone mistreat a police or mistreat a military guy, like that should still throw up so many flags. Be like, this is unacceptable behavior, and I will never understand why they side on the side that they do in certain cases, and on the other side on other cases. It's just. This example is just another one that non-lethal, but it's a clear example of how minorities are treated, even when they are part of the club, the uniform club, right? They're on some kind of thin line and they still get treated like lessers by the police. It's unnerving, and this is a further example of the massive reform that's necessary in this country.
Exactly. And it's really bothering to me in that aspect. So then we got to talk about what's qualified immunity, right? Why I'm jumping ahead. Why do cops feel that they have the ability to just murder people on the side of the road, right? There's a reason for it. There's 100% a reason for this, because if you feel you can get away with something, you're going to, right? Now, I guess I'm jumping ahead again a little bit farther. Qualified immunity essentially allows for people to sue in a civil suit cops and governments, mainly governments, for wrongful doing. Now, I have a million questions about that, because I don't understand. Okay, if I kill you, right? I'm a cop and I walk into a house and I kill you, whether I'm right, wrong, or indifferent, I kill you. Why is there a civil suit? Why do we not have regular ability for people to prosecute and get charged with murder? Because it seems like everybody keeps not getting convicted. That's what this seems like. And then
when they do the criminal, they basically do a criminal investigation, and they find that the police officer was, I mean, it's a stressful job. It's a stressful thing. It's, the examples that they always give. It's like they never know exactly what's on the other side, and so that but we have to give them exemption from X, Y, Z, or give them the benefit of the doubt they were acting on the public's better behalf by acting this way. And unfortunately, this was a mistake that they made, but it wasn't entirely their intention, and therefore they shouldn't be held completely and totally responsible for that. The qualified immunity is a legal principle that grants government officials, a police officer technically is a city government official or state government official, basically protects them from when they're performing discretionary functions, and it protects them from civil suits. And so there's a variety of these examples. Essentially what it is it's giving the qualified immunity from the legal case, essentially giving them, it's like, listen, you were trying your best. We're not perfect. You were doing a good thing. This wasn't intentional. You're not in trouble legally. And then it applies to the civil suit situation, where even though it's like the O.J. Simpson, well, he was found not guilty in the criminal case, but he was found guilty in a civil case. This gives police officers and city governments an immunity to both situations if essentially there's no, it has to be proven beyond it seems to be higher than a reasonable doubt. It seems to literally be like an exacerbated, overly level of evidence that's necessary. Like, you have to have him on camera saying, I'm going to kill this guy, and then Like it doesn't seem to be that there's really a threshold of evidence that is just a natural
So
place for this to
the
exist.
video where it says where she goes,
I shot him.
taser, 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 and then says, "Oh, I shot him." I'm
Yeah,
pretty
like-
sure that feels like evidence to me.
Yeah, or
I
your
don't
knee
know.
on the back of a guy's neck when he's just saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe," and you don't do anything for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I believe it was. In the end, the threshold for guilt in these situations is so intensely vast and problematic and skewed very much in one direction that people are saying that qualified immunity needs to at least be revisited, and in a lot of cases says it needs to be revoked because it would require police officers to act with a level of caution when they're dealing with something that isn't, absolutely going to guarantee their justification. Because the argument is that I wasn't sure I shot this person because they seemed dangerous, they did something dangerous, and I could have lost my life. And so they're saying there's a trade-off there. I don't think the trade-off should be as much as a lot of police and people are requiring, and the current level is just really one-sided. It's not.
So
it's
this
not
is the
viable.
definition from this National Conference League of Legislators. The
Okay.
doctrine of qualified immunity protects state and local officials, including law enforcement officers, from individual liability unless the official violated a clearly established constitutional right.
Yeah, that's a really great way to say it. Yeah, clearly established. That in legal precedent, when you say clearly,
Yep. So
that is more than a reasonable doubt. That is without doubt.
Yeah, that's without. So that's 100% voting. So
Yeah.
if one person says, "Well, I think he can remain on the island," they go, "I guess we let him remain on the island." That type of thing.
Yeah.
So I asked the question of, okay, well, if that's the case, right? Does qualified immunity apply to criminal cases? And they say no. Qualified immunity applies only in civil lawsuits, not criminal prosecutions. Yet, civil suits are the only means by which individuals or their families can get compensation for the violation of their constitutional or civil rights. And in practice, civil lawsuits are often the only means to seek justice at all because prosecutors, themselves government workers, are reluctant to bring criminal charges against their government colleagues, especially cops who are crucial to work prosecutors do on a daily basis. So here is our crux of our problem that we've been talking about. When we talk about defunding the police, it's not that I don't want less police on the street. It's that I don't want them to get qualified immunity. I don't want prosecutors and police officers to work so closely together that that's the only thing they rely on. That when we get to these situations, we only have one person. It's called, what is it called, Hannah? When one company owns the stock share of every fucking thing? It's called a fucking monopoly. Hello?
Yeah.
We can apply this to the criminal justice system too, folks. This doesn't fucking have to be a discussion. We can sit here and say, we know for a fact this is a monopoly when you have two government entities working together, not wanting to prosecute each other. We know
they just set it up in Michigan. For voting, they had the Independent Review Council for gerrymandering, so that there isn't whoever is in charge of the state legislature gets to set everything. Why isn't there an independent council that's set up, every year based on whatever metrics? We could all just talk about whatever metric you think would be the best, but why isn't there an independent commission, civil commission? This should not be something that's done through internal affairs by other cops policing other cops. This should be something that's done through the civilian effort, who do the research, who are given the power to go through all of police records and see all of the things these police officers do, all relevant evidence and information, and they can recommend whether or not the AG prosecutes or proceeds with the case. Like, there's, you know what I mean? There's a variety of options that we can do. We can change the way the system works. Whenever we make that recommendation, there's all this, pullback saying like, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't change this. I don't know. I don't think it's that complicated a situation. I'm going to guess that this nice lady is probably going to agree with me.
She is, but I
Yeah.
feel this is a valid video, and I'm going to ask Hannah if we could take 4 minutes to watch this. And I
Yeah, that's
only
fine.
ask that because I feel that this video in and of itself is very valid in explaining what we're trying to explain, but with somebody that has a law degree that we don't, that type
Yeah.
of thing.
I'm a professor from practice at the University of Michigan Law School. I'm really glad we're having these conversations around policing. It's important that we strike the right balance in enabling police officers to do the difficult and dangerous work they need to do to protect the most vulnerable members of our communities, but at the same time, to make sure that we are protecting the constitutional rights of every American. One of the topics you'll hear about when discussing the need to reduce police brutality is qualified immunity. What is qualified immunity? Well, it is a legal doctrine created by judges that allows defendants to assert a defense in civil cases where they are sued for money damages in their individual capacity. It allows them to get cases dismissed before going to trial. Now, as the name suggests, qualified immunity is limited. It's not an absolute immunity. And the officer has to show that his conduct did not violate a clearly established right. Some people suggest that that is an obstacle to holding officers accountable for their wrongdoing. Critics will say that even for blatant violations of constitutional rights, a lawsuit can proceed only if there was already a prior case that established that right as a clearly established right. So a violation that is alleged for the first time is never going to have that precedent of being a clearly established right. Just as an example to show you what I mean, there's a recent case involving a SWAT team that fired tear gas grenades into a person's home without a warrant, causing extensive damage to that home. And in that case, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals held that qualified immunity shielded those officers from liability in a civil lawsuit for money damages because there was no case precedent that squarely governed the facts at issue at the appropriate level of specificity to show that the officers had violated a clearly established right. So as one critic said of this case, the first person to litigate a specific harm is going to be out of luck because the first time around, the right violated won't be a clearly established right. The U.S. Supreme Court recently declined to review this case, and so it stands as the law. So what can we do to change that? Well, there'd be a couple ways. One would be for courts to overturn precedent, but as we saw by the Supreme Court's recent action, courts are reluctant to do that because typically they are bound by something known as stare decisis, where they follow the precedents of the cases that have come before. And so the most obvious way to change it would be through legislative means, through a statute that's passed to change that law, and that could be done. In fact, there is proposed legislation in Congress right now called the Justice in Policing Act that would modify qualified immunity by eliminating that requirement to show a clearly established right. Now, there are certainly pros and cons to this debate. One concern is that by limiting or eliminating qualified immunity might not even have the intended effect. That's because under police union contracts, oftentimes officers are indemnified for their judgments. That means the city pays. And so will ending qualified immunity have any effect on changing officers' behavior? A second concern is that qualified immunity will reach only a small number of incidents, those committed by the so-called bad apples in police departments, instead of examining the practices and culture of entire police departments in a comprehensive way. And finally, some are concerned that if we end qualified immunity, we'll create a chilling effect that will prevent police officers from using force even when it's needed, or it might discourage prudent people from taking jobs as police officers if it could risk losing their life savings. So these are important issues. I'm glad we're talking about that, and you'll be hearing more about it, I'm sure, in the weeks and months to come.
So, she makes some... okay, I wanted to play this because of the fact that I just went on an hour tirade with you about defunding police and fuck them, they're way too open. What she says makes a lot of sense, though. And it makes sense because if we only focus on qualified immunity and don't actually change, and let's be frank, how much money was poured into Minneapolis years ago before George Floyd, and here we are a year later after national protests about this, and we're here a year later and nothing's changed. Now, you tell me, we can argue about qualified immunity, which is not what we're going to spend our time doing. Because after listening to this lady and doing a little bit more research, I found we can get rid of qualified immunity, but really the big issue here is, what is the legal standard for deadly force in a police shooting, right? Because if we're going to ignore qualified immunity for now, right? So we've established it's civil lawsuits. It doesn't affect the criminal case. Should we be looking at these things as criminal matters more so than looking at it as a financial, obligation against whoever it is? And I say this because
I was just going to say that financial thing doesn't actually attribute to the police officers that made the mistake, too. In a lot of cases, they just lose their job, but they're not liable for all that kind of stuff. It's the city itself that pays a huge pile of money. So, like, the qualified immunity thing, essentially, even if it's proven that they made a mistake or whatever, like, they may lose their job. Almost absolutely never do they ever actually go to jail for it. It's just a civil suit to the city. The city has to pay millions of dollars. That cop loses their job. They can also just go to a new place and get a new police officer job. Like, there's tons of examples of police officers hopping from different stations after getting fired or losing their job for a variety of things. So, like, there's no the financial aspect of that isn't really going to be changing a whole lot of stuff. And she mentioned it in the video. It said, will that actually change the behavior of the police officers because the cities are held liable financially for this? This here, changing the legal standard for what deadly force should in a shooting by police, what is the standard? Then we're looking at behavioral change, which is kind of the main goal for most people, and not. It wasn't the main topic for the conclusion for how to change the police in Talking to Strangers, the book that I mentioned. But I definitely think this would be a short term, and the Talking to Strangers solution in their book in Malcolm's book would be a long term change.
Well, and I agree with you, and I think that's why we've been talking about qualified immunity a lot, as a country. And New Mexico just got rid of their qualified immunity. And I'm actually still not against getting rid of qualified immunity, personally. Like, so let's be honest. I just think that it should take a back seat to other issues that we're experiencing. And like you said, because they're not holding them financially responsible, the goal is how do I hold this city financially responsible? Because then they will enforce these laws and these training practices. But as of today, we are not seeing that. We are not seeing even cities that are sued holding their officers more liable. Now, if the family for George Floyd had sued, Minneapolis, right, and won 6 months ago, would we have seen a change? Because that would essentially make it even bigger. So, like, if they sued, they won millions of dollars from Minneapolis, would we see a bigger change in how they're policing,
by now?
laws?
Yeah, the argument is just like the cities. So this is actually something that's quantifiable. You can look at all the cities of the last 6 months to a year that have been making these huge payments. Like the George Floyd payment was the biggest one on record, as far as I know. But like they've been seeing massive payouts. We're seeing tons of money, tons of taxpayer money, right? This isn't like, the police station, they raised this money and now it's all gone. The city, they took this money and they raised it by whatever means. This is It's taxpayer money. These are the people in the city, yours and my money for the city we live in. A cop does something stupid. It does something absolutely reckless and harmful. We pay, as the people who live in that city, millions of dollars to the family.
I'm going to stop you for a second, though. I'm going to argue a tiny bit with that. And I'm going to say, you're right. Us as taxpayers do have to pay. But hold on. Because let's go back to this settlement. You just said, hey, it's one of the largest settlements. $27 million. This happened at the beginning of March.
Yeah.
The police have not changed. Hence,
no.
If they knew this had happened, I was a manager for a long time. If my employee made a mistake where OSHA came in and fined us $1 million, my company would come to me and say, what are you going to do to fix this so this never happens again? That's going to be the question. And they might not have me fire anybody. It might not be any of those things, but they're going to sit there and tell me, how does this not happen again? That's going to be literally the first conversation we have. And so if a month ago, not like almost to date, for fuck's sake, March 12th. So between March 11th and March 12th, and what's the date today? April 12th?
April.
So almost a month to date of paying a record settlement, they still are killing black people. Tell me how the fuck that's a deterrent. And I agree with you in the aspect of, yes, it's you and my taxpayer money, but at the exact same time, I'm going to say, let's remove us from the equation because
the reason I mentioned
that.
The reason I mentioned that is because you hear conservative and fiscal conservatives, right? You hear conservative people who say, I don't want to pay my taxes. The city's using my money terribly. Cops are doing terrible things that then the courts are saying, like, we're going to give $20 million to this family. Like, fiscal conservatives, conservative people who think cities should spend their money wisely, should spend their tax money wisely, should be upset beyond all means when their city coffers get completely and utterly raided by cops being bad and losing lawsuits. They should be hugely upset by that. I mean, it would upset me if I was spending all my money in Mayfield Heights, where I live, and the police officers killed somebody and it costs $20 million. I already pay a ton of money in taxes where I live already. I expect them to be using my money wisely. If the police force is acting incredibly erroneously, terribly, and harmfully, and spending my money horribly, and not building up the infrastructure, not building up my parks, not building up my roads, and fixing my neighborhood, then I'm gonna say this is BS, and I am pissed. I don't understand why people in these cities and then conservative people in these cities don't get super upset when a huge payment like this goes out, because this would be something that you would hear fiscal conservatives being really upset about. And so I just a point of irony or hypocrisy that I find interesting on that, because it's like, why aren't you being more upset about all that money going out?
Exactly. And the difference is they shouldn't be upset the family got the money. What they should be upset about is the fact that my taxpayer dollars went for you to murder somebody. Yeah. And now that family, you now have to support that family for the rest of their life. Go fuck yourself. And
it's stupid.
This comes back to like a personal thing. Like, I had a friend who was hit by a truck driver, lost their leg, and pretty much was almost dead. Her kids are in the car, and their settlement was over $1 million, right? Mm-hmm. And her and I were talking the other day, and she says a lot of people sit there and think about, I got my money, blah blah blah, but they understand I can't go ice skating again. I used to play hockey. I can't play hockey anymore. I could play pool without any issues. When the weather turns bad, my leg hurts. When this and that. So you want this money? Here you go. You go pay somebody to amputate your leg for $1 million or more, and that's fine. That's your decision.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
My mother's in the same situation. My mother's in the same situation on that. Like, from her accident, when she spent months and months and months and months in the ICU, she would trade every bit of money she's gotten from insurance on that. I mean, she would.
Yeah.
She would trade every penny, and I would too, so that she wouldn't be in as much pain daily as she's in. But since
Yeah.
the kid that hit her was just a young kid who was just stupid, who made a stupid decision and directly affected someone else's life, like a cop making a stupid decision, pulling the wrong weapon and killing someone, whatever. Like, it's a stupid excuse, and accountability needs to be had. And that's an issue here. It's like accountability for these police officers. Oh, you were bad. You did the wrong thing. You're fired. You can go to the next county and get a job over there. Give me a break. You know what I mean? So like if you take that accountability and you apply it properly to the person who made the decision, it doesn't have to be absolute and total, accountability, but there's definitely needs to be an adjustment of where it is. It's not where it needs to be. And so like, okay, maybe will deter good people from becoming police officers because they could lose all their life savings. Fine. So let's take away the financial aspect of the police officers being financially liable. But if you make a big enough decision, sorry, you're going to jail. You know what I mean? Like, if you should have the same legal liabilities of using force in a totally unexpected and unwarranted way, just because you're a cop and it's a tough job, you can still go to jail. Like, that is such not the case in this situation. And then often in this, like Derek Chauvin, what we got going right now, that you got pulled up, like, that's not always the case. And I mean, I shudder to think what's going to happen in this country if Chauvin gets off, but we'll see. I mean, it's just another example.
I think we should burn. We should literally burn every Capitol building in every police department. I'm not saying this so you can legally prosecute me, but I am kind of saying that if that happens, don't be surprised if there's a fat guy with a black hood on burning buildings down. And I guess I've been drinking a little bit, so I'm a little bit more passionate than before. But I'm going to tell you right now, if we as a society can't figure out how to fix these things, we're no better than Russia. We're no better than China. We're no better than North Korea. We're not. Just because it doesn't happen to you or somebody you know does not mean these things don't happen. This article talks from 538 talks about why it's rare police officers ever face legal consequence. And I'm really telling you, if you have video now, which is what we have, so like if you turn your video off, that should be akin to raping somebody. You have a video camera for a reason on yourself. You are
body cams should be mandatory, and they should not have an on-off button.
Yeah, it should.
They should literally be turned on by in the morning. You are issued your weapon and your body cam in the morning by the armory, and you put those two things on you, and you cannot turn that damn thing off until you hand it off. Like, there should be no power button on it. It should be on and on your person at all times, period. No questions, no adjustments, no buttons, no switches, no nothing. It's on or whatever. Like,
I mean, we live in a day and age when my iPhone can surf the internet and listen to music for 10 to 12 hours a day, where I get 6 hours of talk time. For fuck's sake, you can have a camera that broadcasts, change out your battery every time. And you twice a day, you can have a lithium-ion battery that's probably about as big as a pen on your shoulder.
Just put one in the pocket
and transmits it.
Yeah, just put a booster battery in your pocket. I mean, they have a tactical vest. They got all kinds of pockets. They got all kinds of cool stuff they can do. I mean, it doesn't have to be high resolution either. A standard resolution, you get 480 or something like that. It's going to be doing a good enough job for what we're looking at here. In a lot of these situations, and you will see these body cams, they're garbage resolution anyways. I mean, we're talking low quality. We're talking low energy. We're talking low light. Oftentimes, it's just black and white. I mean, this is not a difficult problem. It's not a difficult solution that you have to solve. We have the technology. We have all of these things. It's just cops know that if they have no control and no option over the surveillance, that they lose some of the freedoms and rights that they are now. And you know what I mean? It's like we wonder why the conservative Christian right in this country is screaming and screeching so wildly and crazy as they lose some of their majority status and their governmental position. And we see, a more diverse country growing and growing and growing. Well, the cops and the police officers are doing the same kind of thing. There is a real threat to their general growth of power. Like, we've seen police officers grow in strength and power, and they're becoming more and more militarized over the years. There is a threat to that. We are trying to stop them from getting stronger and more powerful. And the natural reaction in any group of people who has that much power is going to be upset that they're losing some of that strength, prosperity, and position and power. This is a natural reaction. So I don't know. I don't think that they're going to give up this power easily. And I don't think it'll be I don't think riots will change them. I think strategically manipulating the legal system, young people getting involved in voting and creating super PACs and exploiting all of the things that conservative money, people do, that will be the thing that changes it. How quickly we ever get to that point, that's, to me, it's going to be whether or not we ever actually change the system, is if we get inside of it and SLC punk it.
Maybe. Or the riots will work, Hannah, in the aspect of if enough of us, and I'll challenge you a little bit too to say, you got a lot to lose. I got a lot to lose. What if we decided for the next month and everybody else made that decision? We're going to go out and we're going to protest for a month. We're going to shut the economy down, right? We're going to shut. You talk about COVID. Everybody freaked out when we were shutting the economy down for COVID. Why don't we shut it down because black people keep getting murdered? Because I'm going to tell you, and I'll be frank again and honest, and I'm going to tell you, if we shut the economy down, they will listen. I don't need to wait to a super PAC. I don't disagree with you. How do I get long-term change? Super PAC.
Yeah.
How do I get short-term change? Shutting the total economy down over this. And
I just don't think
how to
you could
get
ever
people to do that.
I'd have to say, I don't know what it would take to hit a monoculture like that. Like, the last time it happened, I mean, that was close to it that I can think of was 9/11. I can't think of any time in my life where there was a monoculture that was capable of basically doing almost anything if it was guided in the right direction. I can't think of any other time in my life when it was that intense. And so, like,
and you know why? Because of capitalism. And there you go. There's my socialist soapbox. And I will be on, by the way, I will be on a Marxist socialist podcast here in 3 weeks with our friend Corey Johnson, talking about the book. And I'm going to show everybody this book. And we're gonna discuss it on the show too, but I'm gonna wait because I'm gonna give his show the preview. It's called Work. It talks about essentially why we are nothing more than little minions and why we can emancipate ourselves from all of this and remove the corporate capitalists from our lives if that's what we wanted to do, but we choose not to because we're masochists. We're sadists. We like that shit.
In America, we brag about how many hours we work. I'm guilty of it. I used to brag about it all the time. Working 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week. And as time has gone on and I realized, that's kind of a dumb thing to be proud of. When it was me and my own company, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it'd be like if you're working for someone else and bragging about working 8 hours, that's a different story. But it was my father and myself bragging about working crazy amounts of hours, because that was investments in myself. But like, the fact that the infrastructure bill and everything that's going through right now, it's like all of these companies are like, we're going to build infrastructure. We're going to do all these great things. We're meeting with the president. It's awesome. All of these things that we're concentrating on, like, there are structural changes involving this qualified immunity stuff, structural changes in this country that need to be changed. And we look towards capitalism. We look towards the leaders in the market economy. And they're like, we need these things. Can you guys do these things? And the president is like, we should meet in my office. We should really talk. But why aren't the people who are like, all these minorities are getting murdered and there's kids in trailers at the border because we have these really big problems with treating people like humans when they come across borders and stuff. How come those people aren't in the Oval Office meeting to huge fanfare? You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Infrastructure, it's awesome, but also human rights are really awesome too. And I would love to see those things be more of a priority. And so, like, all of that kind of stuff rolled into one here is, it's interesting how far this problem reaches, because if you're a real Bernie Sanders guy like me, economic disparity and economic inequality is the driver for many of the issues that's happening here. And it is one of the issues for why police are so bad, is because of economic disparity and economic problems and certain groups of people that are basically have no recourse, and so they basically go to whatever they can do to make money, and it creates crime hotspots in the cities. And the police concentrate on those, and there's a perpetual downward spiral. Blah blah blah. These aren't complicated topics, but they are things that are real tools that are used. And the police are like, well, it's so bad, but you kind of made it bad. That's why you need qualified immunity, because you're going into a war zone. You made the war zone.
And I will predict this. I'm going to predict this.
Ooh.
This is a prediction.
Ooh. Predictions.
If the current administration does not address this, it will not see a second term. I'm predicting this right now.
I don't think he'll run for second term personally, but
he already says he's going to. I don't care.
I know.
How about this?
Either way,
Kamala Harris will not see her first term if they don't address this. And and I'm not going to say they won't, because this kind of leads us into our next topic, right, of the discussion of gun control. What did they do in all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they had a pretty quick response for a government agency to address their issues. But before I leave that, I have to make one statement. So these numbers that we could look at that we're not going to, because I think I've inundated people enough with this discussion. But these numbers found 110 law enforcement officers had been charged with murder or manslaughter in on-duty shootings, despite the fact that 1,000 people are shot annually, right? So just
fatally
over 10%. Huh?
1,000 people are fatally shot. So 1,000 humans are killed. Yep. Yes.
So a little over than 10%, 10.1% of people are actually charged. Furthermore, only 42 officers on average are convicted, 50 are not, and 18 are pending. So, literally less than 5% are charged with murder of fatal shootings. And if we took these numbers and we looked at them as just shooting or harm created, we would see less than 0.5% of people actually getting charged for anything.
Oh yeah.
And that folks is fucking disgusting. That is so disgusting. I almost feel like calling into work and saying, unless you want to stand up for Dante Wright, go fuck yourself. I'm taking a day off and in protest to you. And don't pay me. I don't give a shit. I could care less. But it leads us into the discussion about gun control, right? Because
a little bit. Yeah.
No, it does. I agree wholeheartedly. We could talk about gun control for other people, but we should be talking about gun control for us, for cops and government agencies as well. And how about this? My friend worked at Oshkosh, and Oshkosh makes military equipment. So, if a Humvee goes overseas, sees any action, even if it's driving around the desert, it gets fully torn down and rebuilt. Now, think about that. Okay. They want to guarantee the safety of that soldier so much that they take a $500,000 Humvee, transport it back and forth, tear it down, and then pay Oshkosh whatever the price is to rebuild it. Mm-hmm. They do that all the time. Yeah, we do that with ambulances. We do that with all sorts of things. Now, it's not as common with an ambulance as it is with like a Humvee or a tank or any of these other things, right? So think about it this way. The amount of safety we want to put into the vehicles that we give to overseas people is a lot, right? So if that's the case, and if that's because we're worried about the people deployed, and I don't know how many people are deployed, let's just say 2 billion people are deployed worldwide from the United States. And we're so concerned about these 2 million people who could die from this. Why don't we take the same safety measures with our own citizens? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's illogical to me why we wouldn't be looking at gun safety in the same way. Because gun safety, guns kill how many people a year, Hannah?
Oh, I don't know the number on that one. That's
Really?
Yeah, that's a big one. I'm assuming that number is pretty high. I could look in the Google Doc, but I'm assuming that you probably want to just like revel in it. I was just looking up something I thought
revel in anything.
I
Come
thought
on.
I was just looking up something that I thought was that you would enjoy is if you look list of killings by law enforcement officers in the United Kingdom, you can see the 2020s, the 2010s, the 20s, the 2000s, or whatever. Like so far in the 2020s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So far since 2020 and 2021, we've had 5 people killed. In 2010, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, maybe 21, 22 people. So for a decade, England police officers killed just over 20 people. So far in the last 2 years, 5 people. Comparable. Gun control, England, high. Cops killing people, low. Interesting data point. I find it useful to use most raw data as a driving measurement and metric in my decision making. And I would say that in England, those are some pretty in Great Britain, those are some pretty solid numbers there. I mean, I'm guessing that's kind of what you're leaning toward. I will say that a lot of the names of the people who have been killed of the last few years, there's a lot of Ala'i Muhammads and stuff like that going on there because they do have a big problem with violence coming into the country from some of the refugee issues. But in all reality, if you look at that number of people, 6 people, 5 people in the last 2 years, I don't know if you can call that a problem. Because in the United States, as Kyle Kinane loves to say when he was going through a stand-up comedian, Kyle Kinane says when he was going through a Jack the Ripper tour in England, that believed that Jack the Ripper had killed 5 people. And Kyle Kinane said that, it's kind of weird, but in America, we got someone killing 5 people right now. So in all reality, like if you do a general comparison when it comes to gun violence and things that are happening in this country, you look at Europe, you look at the numbers, you look at the people that are causing the problem, you look at the crime metrics, and then you look at what we have going on here, and it's just a cliff difference. And so
a little bit.
I don't know. I think there's something there. I'm confident there's something there.
There is. So let's look at what Biden's proposing, right? And I say this because I think that we should discuss this, and we don't have to get into the worldwide aspect. I do love those numbers, and I do sit there. I think of like Sweetie Todd, and I go, how many people did he put in a pie, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the guy that killed.
There's
people
not enough.
In Colorado
There's not enough dead people.
Man.
There's not enough dead people in Great Britain to make the pies. That's the point. They should be making the pies in the United States. We should make them here where all the dead bodies are.
Exactly. Now I got the Sweeney Todd song in my head.
Yeah. Is
Anyway.
either that or is it the Elixir guy? Mr. Elixir. That guy.
Yeah.
And I always think of Sacha Baron Cohen.
We're going to go on a Sweeney Todd tangent, and I'll do that for an hour. But
Got it. So Joe Biden wants to take away all of our guns and put us all in jail, right?
that's what people seem to think. And people are upset by this first statement. So the first thing he said, let's be frank. It's not him. He's just saying things like it's the team behind him creating this, not him.
Yeah.
But
it's an administration. The word means something. But yes.
Well, Joe Biden's just the puppet old guy that drools on stage. Anyway, we're gonna move on because I have a hard time with Joe Biden on stage. Okay. At fairness, he hasn't criticized anybody. He hasn't pushed blame off yet. A little bit he has, but not to the extreme extent. He hasn't called anybody a name. He hasn't said anything racial. He hasn't exempted a terrorist group. I mean, I'm at 6 things out of things that Trump did within the first, 100 days of his administration. That
he didn't hold
happened.
a weird glowing orb with a bunch of Saudi princes. That was a good one.
All right.
So, anyways, Biden basically is going to try to get rid of ghost guns. Ghost guns. What are those?
Ghost guns are where you can buy a kit and basically make we'll call them one-time use gun. Like, in reality, they can be used more often, but they're really designed to be a one-time or a couple of time use guns. You can assemble it in under 30 minutes. They have no serial numbers, no registration. You don't have to register you're buying this kit because you're buying individual pieces to make something you're going to put on the shelf. It's like that knife I have that looks like a gun. I have a knife that looks like a gun where you pull it out and it's got a gun handle with a knife on the end. And you'd be like, oh, he's got an old pistol from, the 1800s from a pirate. But, it's a knife. That's what this is like. It's like, who the fuck would own that, Chris? Why do you own a gun knife?
It's a little more like the little tiny little CNC I have sitting over on my bench over there, where I could download all of the pieces and all of the CAD necessary to just mill out of aluminum a little gun. And then I could buy steel and make a barrel and a combustion chamber that the gun and bullets would actually function through. All of those things are done easily online in a kit, whatever, however. And so I can make a weapon that can kill someone, and the government has no idea where that weapon is or that it even exists. And so this is an attempt to get that under control, and I have no issue with that. In fact, some of the other people that I talk to here in the Utopia of Cleveburg, they also kind of don't like those things, which is weird because they're relatively conservative and they like guns, but they don't like the fact that you can just build a creepy gun with no kind of tracking at all. Yeah. So that is relatively gross.
And I think that's bigger because that was always the discussion that the conservatives had with us. They're always like, well, criminals, they don't legally get guns. Okay, fine. Oh, hey, here's the way they can illegally get a gun without purchasing it on the black market. And, we're going to stop that. Because, again, think about Hannah. If you were poor and you had a drug addiction, which you might have one. I don't know. I mean, I've seen the amount of peppers you eat, man. I'm sorry. Yeah. Like, you might try to kill somebody to get extra hot pepper.
See, I could have heroin, PCP, and all kinds of weird things on my bucket list.
Hey,
you don't know.
That shit, man. Don't say that. You got cops driving by your house.
I know.
They're listening in. They're like, he just said it. We're gonna. If Hannah gets raided, I predict it. If Hannah gets raided, he'll be taken in peacefully by the cops, and they'll find no PCP in his house.
Yeah, no, they'll take me in because I'm a middle-class white guy. I'll go to the police station, I'll get special treatment, and then we can go downtown and I get shot immediately.
But you're right. Like, okay, you can make all these things, right? So you could be a side arms dealer to some extent if you wanted.
I could legally obtain all the things I need with my skill set and then sell guns all day long on the dark web. I could sell tons of weapons. I could easily do it.
So all Biden's saying is they're gonna look at how ghost guns.
How do you stop that?
And sell that, right? Because and again, I agree with this one. I think that's a big step because
100%.
A lot of people say criminals get guns illegally. Okay, so let's find out how to stop that. We can fix that. There's one way. Is it the best thing he should be going for first? I don't know, but there's at least one
Something.
answer. The next thing they want to do is they're going to make a rule about essentially short-barreled rifles and stabilizing devices. I'm 50-50 with this. Like, I personally think this is silly. I get their point, but when we talk about, well, the guy had a concealed pistol and a firearm brace, well, hold on. The first thing that comes to mind is maybe not allow concealed weapons. Maybe you just allow the guy to have the weapon on the side of his arm or on the side of his thing, and everybody walks by. And I'll tell you. Here, I'm
Open carry is the only carry, so it's visible no matter where you go. If you're carrying, it's open and everybody knows.
Exactly, because I'll tell you a secret, and I pray to the god of the spaghetti monster that this happens. That I walk into a Walmart or a Meijer or some grocery store someday, and some guy's got a fucking automatic or a semi-automatic rifle on his back. I will call the cops and say, "There's a guy with a gun in this store." I don't give a shit if he thinks it's legal. I don't give a shit if it is legal. I'm scared that an asshole, I'll be the Karen in that situation. Here you go. Yeah. I'll be the Karen that goes, well, and when they ask me, it's like, I don't know. How the fuck do I know that this white guy ain't going to shoot anybody? Because I'll tell you what, how many fucking times have white guys gone into stores and shot people up?
Yeah.
Oh, a lot.
Well, the guy that was in Texas who shot up a grocery store. I mean, it's not complicated.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, in this situation here, this is basically, these are accessory items that turn a pistol into a short-barreled rifle. So you have a small rifle, you have a small pistol, you stick a long barrel on it, and you can give it some shoulder support. So you're taking a weapon that's relatively concealable and making it larger, more accurate, and more dangerous. Sure. I mean, this is kind of like the magazine restrictions where like you can't have, elbow 15 round magazines and stuff like that. Like these are things to make it more difficult to kill more people, because when you're using the weapon as hunting or self-defense, often you don't need 60 rounds and you don't need the idea of using weapon for self-defense is you're using something quickly and short bursts and in emergencies. You don't have a prolonged gun standoff. You're not barricading over and shooting for hours and half hours. So like the potentiality for like all of these kind of accessories for weapons being viable when it comes to the self-defense argument is relatively negated. And so they're trying to simply say, is this something that's useful for hunting and recreational purposes, or is this something that's intended essentially to make it more lethal and more dangerous? And then they're going to try to possibly restrict those things.
So you can conceal. Who shoots a handgun at a deer? No one. Nobody does that. You don't walk into the forest and go.
Statistically speaking, very low, but there are people who hunt with long barreled handguns. It's very rare though. I've never actually seen one. I've seen it on TV on I've seen it on TV on some of those hunting channels. But other than that, I've never seen someone personally.
Give me a rifle with a scope. Make me think it's a human.
Dude, they put like a Dirty Harry 357 with it. They put a scope on it. They'll put a stupid scope on a hand. I'm telling you, they exist. It's just very, very small numbers of
It's
people.
A video game thing, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. The next one is that they're going to push a red flag legislation.
Yes, forever.
Petition. And, well, exactly. They want, what are red flags? Why do we not have a standard that's used federally across all states? That's all they're saying. We're going to give this. So the answer is states. We gave you this opportunity for the last, 300 years.
Yeah.
No, more than that to create this. Oh, and you can't do that? All right. Fuck you. We're going to give it to you. And this is the way federal government should be working. And this should have been in place I'm going to say over 100 years ago. But I'll grant you that the government wasn't intelligent enough. So fine. I'll give you 50 years. But 50 years ago, this shit should have been happening. And in the 90s, when this started becoming a big problem, here you go. Here's another thing that could help. And in my opinion, and I'm going to be bold. I'm going to make a bold statement here. if you live with somebody in the house that has a red flag or is unqualifiable to own a handgun, you don't fucking get a gun either.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
proximity
I'll
laws.
say that-
Those aren't uncharacteristic.
Well, I'll say that because I don't own a gun because I have. So I don't own a gun partially because I drink, right? I do make irrational decisions, though I've never, ever made them with a firearm, ever in my whole life. Like, I've been around guns pretty much since high school. Like, when I moved to Michigan, I'll tell you what, in Ohio, nobody owned all the guns that people fucking own in Michigan. I'll tell you that. I walked into Michigan.
I don't know what planet you're living in on, because they got
Toledo.
just as many guns here as they do in Michigan.
I don't see them. But, you know, like, when I lived in Toledo growing up, my friends' parents didn't have tons of guns. Hunting wasn't this big thing. People didn't own them and carry them outright.
Where in
Toledo,
Ohio were you at? Were you in
Toledo.
more? Oh, Toledo. Yeah, you were in metropolitan. Like when you get to a little bit more rural area, it's just like
Bowling
Michigan.
Green's
Like,
pretty rural. And my buddy owned a farm. His parents owned a farm. They own a horse farm. They own 2 guns. One to put the horse down, and one for if somebody came on the land that shouldn't. And neither one of them were handguns with long fucking rifles.
Yeah, no.
And nobody had a 357. But I'll tell you what, in my world, because I probably qualify as a red flag for owning a gun to some extent, right? Nobody in my house should get to own a gun. And if you don't like it, don't live in my house, right? Like, that seems very simple. Like,
the red flag
guns-
law though. The red flag law, though, like the whole point of that is temporarily barring people in crisis, and so like we're looking at people that like there is an actual crisis that has been identified for that person in that house or whatever, and so like you potentially have a court case with domestic violence or something along those lines, where like you are a risk towards another person. So like the red flag law is essentially just like making a standardized thing where it's like, if you do X, then sorry, you don't get to buy a gun until this thing has been resolved. And then if you're in the same house as the person who is also in that thing, then that would also apply to you. Like, you can't buy a gun if you are currently roommates with a guy who is on a red flag list because he punched out of his wife in the street or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like those kinds of things seem like they are common sense laws that would be relatively useful in creating a standardized thing across the country. Because I would love to hear the argument from a conservative who says that we should not bar a guy who has a conviction of domestic violence from buying handguns. I mean, I would love to hear what they have to say on that, because it's going to be gross no matter what they do.
That's all they got to do. They're just going to say America. Second Amendment.
Well, I know that, but like,
America.
well, like if it's somebody who's willing to make an actual legitimate argument. So like, the guy the gentleman that we used to actually have on every once in a while, that 2-3 hour conversation about gun control, Stu, yes, like he would basically concentrate on like the civil rights. He would concentrate on the constitutional rights aspect of this, and he would not be able to break it down to the micro. It would have to stay macro, because you cannot deal with that situation micro level when it comes to dealing with the people in the general vicinity. And I mean, it's not a complicated situation. If someone is currently under investigation for domestic violence or whatever, then it should be fine to be able to say, listen, until this is resolved, you can't buy a gun. Sorry. I don't think it's that hard. So like, this is basically the administration saying, we need to do this, create some kind of red flag law that says these people, when this trigger is instigated, cannot buy weapons until it has been turned off. That's awesome. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. The next thing that they want to address, and this to me was a bigger point here, is evidence-based community violence intervention. They are looking to propose $5 billion investment to support community violence intervention programs. They are going to organize webinars and toolkits to educate states on how they can use Medicaid, which has not been used before, honestly, in any large capacity, to reimburse community violence intervention programs. This is amazing right
Yeah.
here. Like, this is big. I don't like a
This
lot
is-
of his other plan. This is good, though.
Mm-hmm.
I like this. They're also
Yeah, this is a
going
real
to
social
have-
program. They're creating a
Yeah.
social program to try to
They're-
support the underlying reasons why people have a tendency towards violence in these communities. Like we're dealing with the root causes. This sounds awesome.
Yes. They're going to also push to allow these programs to start getting support as quickly as possible. Now, if they said they're going to start getting support within the next 6 months, I'd be happy. So, as quick as
Yeah.
possible, bullshit, whatever. I'm going to move on. Hopefully, we see a change. They're also going
As
to
quick
push
as
for an
possible,
annual-
meaning maybe 4 years.
Well, hopefully not. But we're gonna let's
don't
move
know.
on because you're gonna get me on a tangent, and I don't want to go on another tangent. They're gonna issue an annual report, which honestly should be issued every fucking year. So fuck you, that's stupid. They're also going to nominate David Chapman as the Bureau of the ATF. I don't care, I guess. Right? This here doesn't show me anything. And you're telling me, oh, we're gonna take a guy that has done a really good job with them and make him the director. Oh, fuck you, dude. Like, fine, maybe he'll do a good job, but I'll tell you what. Guess what? The last 4 years, the last 8 years, the last 12 years, the ATF isn't very good. And the ATF focuses on completely different things than what you're proposing. So this here, to me, it's just lip service. The only thing I care about at all is this. That right here is literally, well, okay, and the red flags. I'll tell you that's the second one. This is
I would
more
say
important
1
to
and
me.
2.
This is more
The only big perk that I saw with the David Chipman thing is actually I was listening to NPR and they were talking about this. Is like he was considered kind of a firebrand and a hard push for gun control. And he's currently an advisor to a gun control group to lead. And he's going to be leading the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. So like he is considered way more progressive as far as an appointment, and he's going to be relatively controversial when it comes to whether or not he'll actually be able to get approved. So like this is this particular case, the person that the Biden administration is putting out, he may not be someone you're like, ooh, yeah, but like to conservatives, this guy being in charge is terrifying. So like it may not. It's kind of like how we always talk about like who's going to be president. Was Hillary going to be president? Ooh, like we weren't like terrified. We're like, yeah, okay, whatever. She's a centrist, and people, like, conservatives were like, she's gonna melt down everything. Like it's just like they've lost their minds. So this guy being in charge of this particular group in this federal department, this is like terrifying. So like, not where we want him to be, but this is
Fine.
good.
You're
Yeah.
right, fine. But
So
it's-
so
I
3.
don't think Biden has gone far enough.
Yeah.
And
I know.
there's another article, and we're not going to go through it tonight, but it's in the show notes if you want to go through it, from AP News, that talks about if he's gone far enough. Because in essence, what Biden promised on his campaign trail, and no offense, we knew there'd be another mass shooting within the year, especially because everything's opening back up, so now there's more people to shoot again. There's going
that's
to
one
be
of the things.
a male that goes on a shooting rampage and kills people.
Dude, I listened to an argument. I heard an argument by humans that were like, they were like, oh man, Biden's president again. All of a sudden, the mass shootings are starting up, and I'm like,
They were there all along.
well, no, I was gonna say like. What is one of the major ways that you can keep mass shootings from happening is keep anyone from going anywhere and legally locking them down. That's
true.
going to probably reduce the number of mass shootings. There's no concerts. There's no major public gatherings. There's no people in Las Vegas down on the floor listening to the horrible country music. Yeah, there's probably not going to be a bunch of people getting killed.
That is 100% true.
It's frustrating. It's just like, I don't know, just manipulating the data. Just yeah. So, anyways, we'll see what happens. And I support in general where Biden's taking this. It's not pushing hard enough, but I mean, for gun control at all to be a thing that's coming out this early in the administration, even though he was kind of the gun control czar under Obama, I'm still happy. I didn't expect it.
Fair enough. So for our quick saves tonight, I have a pretty awesome one.
This guy, the guitarist, I recognize.
So, this is pig calling contest put to metal. Oh no!
Yeah, this guy does.
All right, I gotta stop real quick. I'm gonna stop. I'm sorry. I don't know who the fuck this dude is, but I love this guy. I love this guy so much. But
The guitarist or the squealer?
the guitarist. No, I don't give a fuck about the squealer. But the whole point of this, okay, let's talk about Chris's style of metal, or Tanner's style of metal, is I love Job for a Cowboy, right? One of my favorite fucking bands. I love that band so much.
They are good.
And my buddy, he would always go to the concerts with me, but only if other bands were there that were supporting them, because he hated them. Because their early first 3 albums, they would growl and scream, and then they would pig squeal. And like he would call that. I'm like, that's stupid. That's stupid. And I argued with him. I saw this 2 weeks ago. Sorry. I saw this a couple of weeks ago. And no, well, I don't know. Whatever.
Time's irrelevant. Continue.
Whatever. I was at his house, and I had saw this earlier in the day, and I had to show him this. And he goes, "Do you believe me that Job for a Cowboy has pig squeals?" And I said, "Yes, I will grant you that because of this right here." So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Goodness. When I saw that, I've watched that video, by the way. Guess how many times?
I'm gonna guess 5.
10 to 15, somewhere in there.
That's good stuff, man.
I don't know, man. It is a very hard thing to not just watch. I feel like joining a pig squealing contest just so I could record this and then make a death metal video out of it. Like, that's what I feel like.
There's an intake shriek squeal that some people do for like vocals and stuff. I can do the intake for like a deep, I don't know. It's like there's ways you can vibrate your vocal cords. Like I make funny sounds for my daughters. She's like, "Hello, little girl." Like an interior, like an inhaling voice, and like, but like there's a way you can do it as the squeal, and like I've seen people, like, I don't know, I can't do it, but like I've seen people that like try out some of the different squealing sounds, and I imagine like those people inadvertently are doing like advanced metal techniques when they're trying to call pigs on a farm. I don't really understand what's happening there, but my quick save is kind of tied to what we talked about last time when I was doing all of the genomics and all that kind of stuff. This is a new thing called CRISPR-off. It's tied to the CRISPR toolbox, but so what CRISPR itself does, and we talked about the mRNA, like ting, 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 finding the thing that it needed and then cutting off the pieces and then popping in a new piece in its place, adjusting the actual genome of a cell. This new addition to the CRISPR toolbox, essentially what it can do is turn on and off particular sections of stuff. So it can use the CRISPR function to cut, slice, dice, chop, whatever, but it can also shut off huge sections of a genome sequence. And so, like, if you want to do, like, let's say you're working on something on your car, and this is a problem on the driver's side headlight. There's something wrong with that section, so you shut off the entire car, the engine, the spark plugs, all the radio, everything that deals with electricity except the battery, the alternator, the distributor if you're an older vehicle, or the electronic ignition system, and just your front driver's side headlight. And so you've limited all of the other stuff. So in humans, that would be like viral information, all of the things in our genome that are directly either on or attributable to our current facets. You could isolate in our genome a couple of things that you want to watch, and you can turn everything off and make adjustments. Like, okay, if I do this to this,
so think about,
does it fix the light switch situation? So like,
how about this?
Yeah.
And let me pose this to you. So what if they give us a vaccine with CRISPR-off in it that targets our hearts, and then Biden comes on the news and says, hey, if I say this specific word, it's going to shut your hearts off now. So you're all now, right now, you're going to bow down and you're going to worship
I actually
me.
wrote a short story. I actually wrote a...
Could that happen? Could that happen?
What it would be is a science fiction fantasy story like the one I had written a few years ago. Only my intention was to write it using nanobots. Essentially, there would be a radio frequency controlled creature inside your body that one person would have the control button for, and if they pushed the wrong button, it would essentially be like human spontaneous combustion. Those little nanobots would just, incinerate, destroy everything inside your body. This thing here is a little more intuitive insofar that it's not something that, like, hey, we're not happy with your behavior, we're going to kill you. This would be something that they would have to introduce a large enough amount of the CRISPR tool itself to modify your entire genome. And with the human genome having 3 billion pairs, and the human system itself being incredibly complex, like, it's not really that easy to throw a vaccine in there and then just have it kill everyone. That would be probably a few years down as far as human genome research and bioweapons. But I mean, it's not outside the possibility. Like, all of these genome tools are freaky.
This subject, because this is an amazing idea, and it's obviously not designed to shut people's hearts off or their breathing. Yeah. It's designed to help us turn off the pieces inside of our body that might feed cancer in the future, right?
Essentially, it could shut off entire sections of genome. As far as I've read here, it's going to be a little bit more towards the research end of things. Because you kind of don't want to turn off stuff, because when your protein misfolds and protein folds, you need those new and unexpected alleles and everything to form. So, like, in the end, my assumption is that when it comes to the human system, we're probably not going to be looking at like a way to turn off a whole bunch of stuff, because most of the stuff in the human genome is actually turned off naturally, because we found that it was beneficial for it to not be on as we worked our way through the evolutionary cycle, like why we don't have tails anymore. All of those genomes, all of those genetic sequences are turned off. This particular tool can turn things on and off at will, but it doesn't modify the genetic code. So like the earlier CRISPR stuff cuts and puts stuff in. This one just kind of turns things on and off, but it doesn't modify the system. And so we could turn on your tail, just kind of like they can turn on the teeth gene in chickens. And so chicken beaks have teeth inside of them. They're terrifying, horrifying, and will give you real nightmares. But it's just a flick of a switch for chickens, and give them like, you know, raptor teeth, because T-Rex used to be a really big chicken. So genetically speaking, we could give a chicken T-Rex teeth. I would pay money to see that. I really would. Good job for a cowboy. That's gotta be a job for a cowboy. Are we getting a pig squeal? Are you queuing us up for a pig squeal? I can't hear you at all. I think your the video audio is overriding your vocals. Or maybe I'm just a deaf person. I can't hear it.
Are you that deaf? Can you hear me now?
Oh, dude, you sound like you're like a
I
robot.
sound like Satan.
You sound like...
Satan. Anyway, thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week with Hannah's CRISPR engineering.